Hi, this is Jacek, and in this PHP tutorial I'm going to be going over the basics of sending emails from a PHP script. But before we get into all that, just a quick note on setup, because before your PHP installation can send an email, you have to set it up to be able to do so. If you're using Linux like I am, it will sort of be done for you if you like, because the default install will detect the location of your sendmail binary, but we don't need to get into that, it's sort of too complicated really. If you're using Windows, the sort of popular PHP server type distributions like XAMPP, or how you're supposed to say it, for example, come with an SMTP server already set up and working and ready for you as well. You just need to make sure that you start it up before you sort of get into sending emails. I believe in XAMPP, or with, well, I think with all of them actually, it's called Mercury or something along those lines, and you can just start it from the control panel. I won't really show you how to do that because it's quite simple. You just need to click start. Should work then. There is another slight problem that you may sort of see where emails just don't arrive, but I'll go into that a little bit later on. Anyway, so let's get on with the actual sort of code. So what we want to do is send an email from a script. I'm going to be using this script here, email.php, just as an example. I'm not going to be doing anything like creating a form or a page to do this. I'm just going to be literally coding out the code to send the email, and then we're just going to run it by loading the browser page. So I've got this script open in my browser window here, just email.php, you can see, and I've also got a temporary email address that I've set up, which is where we're going to be sending the addresses to. This is using my sort of hosting service, so this is like on the internet. It's a proper email address. Yeah, not really sure why I'm saying that. Anyway, if we just go to the code, we can sort of get started. So at the moment this page is completely blank. It's just got the opening and closing PHP tags, and what we're going to do is use a PHP function to send an email. So if we just use that function to send an email, you just use the mail function. This function takes 5 parameters. We can ignore the last one. So the first parameter is the address you want to send it to, and the address of that inbox I just showed you is this. Okay, like so. Second parameter is the subject line, so let's just try test email. The third parameter is the actual message, so what will appear when you open the email. So let's just type, I don't know, message body. And then finally, this one is a bit more technical. It's additional headers, and what this is, well, when you send an email, it's sort of split up into 2 sections: headers and sort of the body of the message, the content. So headers are sort of technical things, and they tell the email server and the sort of email client, in this case it's browser-based, some things about the email. So one of them is the subject line. So the header will be subject, like so, and then the subject, which is in this case test email. There's also the reply to header, for example, which you can set to control who the sort of user will reply to when they click the reply button. But in this case, what we want to set is the from header, because that tells the client who the email is from. Quite important. So you just add in the fourth parameter, sorry, from, like so. This headers are formatted. The name of the header, colon, space, value, sort of key and value pairs basically. It's quite simple. And the value we're just going to use here is, well, we'll just do the same. Why not? In reality, this would most likely be your email address instead of mine, obviously. So if we just go back to our browser and hit reload on this page, and then go back to our inbox and reload it, you can see that this test email has arrived, and you can see that it's from the same email address as the one we sent it to. So again, like I said, you would most likely put your email address there. So if we open this up, eventually you can see that we have this message body, and that is because that's what we specified as the main sort of body of the message. And if we just click this little arrow here, you can see that these things here are all of the headers. So if you remember, I showed you the example of the subject. Here's that header here, and then here from at the very end is the one we added. So anything that you add in the additional headers field will be placed at the end of this list. These other things you don't really need to worry about, they're kind of added by the server. So just ignore that, but try not to get too bogged down in headers, it's not very interesting. So that's essentially it for the basics of sending email. Obviously, you can use sort of variables as each of these parameters. So you could have the like email address a bit more dynamic, like you could send it to someone from a database or send multiple emails, that kind of thing. And now that other problem that I sort of said I'd mention a bit later on, and almost forgot about, to be honest, is that sometimes the email just simply won't arrive in the inbox. According to your script, it will appear as it's sent, you won't get an error, except when you check, it just won't have arrived. The reason for that can be that your internet service provider, ISP, is filtering out SMTP looking traffic. For me, I don't have that problem in the UK using BT, so you can eliminate that if you're using the same ISP as me. But sometimes they want to protect their network against, like being used for spam, because you could just run this script infinitely and have it send out as much email as you sort of could. And that's obviously something that they would want to prevent happening on their network because it gets them a bad reputation. The other cause is potential spam filtering on the sort of receiver end, because if you send an email address that claims to be from from someone that it actually isn't from, so by that I mean, say here this email address is from the user test1 at this domain, and if the server checks the IP that this email address came from and it doesn't match the IP of this domain name, it may just drop the email and not even put it in your junk folder. I believe Google Mail and Hotmail are quite bad for this, so if you're testing with a Google Mail or Hotmail account, you may run into that problem. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. This is the absolute basics of sending an email message. In the upcoming videos, I'm going to be covering how to send HTML messages, so that's going to be a little bit more interesting. Okay, so thank you for watching, and hopefully this was useful.